Going on to verses 5 through 8, we continue the heavenly context for the giving of the 7 last plagues. Does someone want to read verse 8 in particular?
And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no man was able to enter into the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled.
So it's important to notice that no one is in the temple in heaven when these last plagues fall. Previously, the throne room in heaven was full of millions upon millions of heavenly beings. Might this mean or lead us to believe that the events connected to the 7 last plagues will take place after the close of probation? This week I wasn't raised indoctrinated in Adventism, so this idea of what the close of probation, do other faiths talk about the close of probation? No, that is a uniquely Adventist thing. So can someone maybe expound upon what they understand the close of probation to be? I'm getting into some water, so you have to answer, somebody.
I used to consider it an arbitrary date and time when God's goals have been met. My thinking has changed since coming to this class. It's now the point in time where every human being has made the choice, has made up their mind to accept truth, embrace truth, and allow truth and love to change their heart, modify for the better, or the people who rejected truth and therefore the only thing left now is to believe a lie. So when humanity has self-separated into those two groups, that's when the Holy Spirit's work is done. The Holy Spirit cannot reveal any more light to those who believe because they already believe. They're settled into the truth. Any more light revealed to those who don't believe is a waste of time and energy. Probation's closed.
Yeah, probation is a time of choosing, and when the time of choosing is ended, everybody's made a choice.
Dale, did you want to add something?
I grew up believing something slightly different, and I only offer it, I don't believe it now, but I would offer it to just to expand the ideas. I was taught that in 1844, God started a process, and that essentially God is limited like we are, temporally limited somehow, which I obviously don't believe that, but that's kind of what I grew up thinking, that, well, he started through the record, and it's like, do this, do the next one, and well, when he came up to modern time, then what's he going to do? Well, he still has to, his agenda has to go this direction, so, well, probation is over. It's kind of an arbitrary idea and one that puts temporal limits on God,
Okay.
which to me completely contradicts Romans 8:1, which says, therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Well said.
Does anyone have any insight to affirm the idea that the close of probation has already happened prior to the 7 last plagues? And while you're considering that, why would that matter? So one, do we have evidence to support, as this quarterly alludes, that the close... I certainly am not fit at this point to oppose that, and then secondly, why would it matter? James?
Does a person's probation close when they die? So everybody that's dead has their probation closed. Just a question.
Have you thought that before? Have you considered that?
I've thought that I don't have the ability. Once I die, I don't have the ability to make a choice.
Donna?
Well, if that was true, and I'm not disagreeing necessarily, but, the concept when the dead are raised, okay, for that final, when the holy city comes down, the gates are open, devil is getting his troops ready, okay, to take the city. But why does he leave the gates open, okay, so that it could show the saved, okay, that they still have a choice, but they're so settled into it that they're not going to choose to come in. but to show that there's still a choice.
I think in
Okay,
the-
as long as there's life, okay. I don't know.
life even after death is what you're saying, because
Yeah, when they raise back up, okay? They're raised up with the same character, the same whatever, okay? And it will show that God isn't excluding anybody, okay? That people have a choice. What about, some of the people, let's say, that were lost in the flood?
We talked
Maybe
about the
children,
flood, yeah.
They see,
So we'll look forward
There's gotta
to
be a
hearing
reason,
some
yeah.
new insights into this subject in the very near future. I think we're looking at March 15th, 16th, that Sabbath, for kind of some further insight into this area. But the second part of the question, why would it matter whether the probation had closed before or after the onslaught of the 7 last plagues?
If I could introduce kind of a strange thought. I was raised in the Adventist church. I've heard, seminar after seminar talking about the close of probation. But reading it this week was the first time that I had ever seen the phrase in that verse that says that the temple, that says the temple was filled with smoke, the glory of God filled it. Until the 7 plagues, nobody could enter until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. And that made me wonder, is part of the purpose of the 7 plagues, when God is letting go, to demonstrate the adversary and perhaps eventually change the minds? I don't know. But I did note, and I thought it was very cool, that the reason nobody else enters the temple is because God is in it. And if you look back in Israel's time, when God entered the temple, not even the priests would go in. So the ministry ended, and if you look at it as a metaphor or a symbol, and God's temple is his people, then perhaps God stops working for us because we're so filled with him that we can't be moved, we can't be shaken. We're already
Beautiful.
filled with the truth and with his character.
That's beautiful. I guess to answer my own question about why would it even matter, I think it does matter about this close of probation and whether or not the close of probation is, as we say, a final thing, or is there another iteration to become? I don't know. Because it says to me that those who believe that the catastrophes wrought in the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, the 7 plagues are from the hand of God as punitive judgment, as covenant curses, another phrase used, these on the unbelieving or the unrepentant, then these plagues would then be falling on permanently deaf ears. So to what end? Punishment, retribution? Are we getting back at them because of what they did to the saints? What does that say about God? Yes.
I might be mistaken, but when the plagues fell on Egypt, didn't some of the Egyptians come to some of the Hebrews after the plagues fell because they actually accepted their ways? After the plagues fell?
Huge multitude that came out.
That's what I see.
Dale?
I could add another thought. I think the concept of the close of, and I don't think the word probation is in Revelation, but it says, let the holy be holy still and the unholy be unholy still. Whatever that text is, says exactly. Do we have to view that as God making an arbitrary dictation that will be the case, or is it the opposite? Is it God saying natural consequences have led to this, and he's just declaring what already exists?
Right. Declaring, getting his
It's
diagnosis
a
on water,
totally different
on the way things
perspective.
are.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, I was going to say, going back from memory, it's funny, I haven't thought about this in a long time, but whether I was taught this, the understanding that I received from my growth up in the Seventh Adventist Church was that there is a time where, like kind of Russell said, when the time comes, only the Father knows that time, and when he stands up, your decision has been made for you. And not necessarily that I made that decision, but that the decision was made, and that then the 7 last plagues would last for, I think we thought, 3.5 years. remainder part of the 3.5 years of Daniel. And then during that time period would be the time of trouble, where we would actually wrestle with our thoughts and convictions, while Jesus was no longer the intercessor for us before the Father. So therefore, we had to either be right or wrong at that time period. To answer your question, you said it doesn't matter one way or the other. It definitely does, because I think if we see that laid out in that direction, then it does give an indication that God is punishing those that are on this earth. Not only those who did not choose him.
It's not just seems like it. It is stated, this is divine punishment. It's divine retribution.
Yeah.
Covenant curses.
But if you look at it another way, like my sister was saying over there, that if you look back at the, Moses' time, when we go through sufferings in this world, that can bring a refining of gold in our lives. It can actually bring us to a decision of something we didn't see before. There's many texts throughout the scriptures that give an indication that when we go through that pain and suffering from the awareness of really what sin has done in my life or how it has hurt others that are around us, that can actually help redirect the pathways in my mind and help me being drawn closer to God. So I think that those plagues that are laid out there, if that has an opportunity to wake somebody up through the process, where like some of the in the olden days with during Moses' time, where it would draw them to say, we want to serve after your God type of mindset, then that is I think it's one of God's last ditch efforts to make that final call. I'm coming. I really want you to come. Is there any way you can see this?
I was raised in a Baptist church, and Revelation is scary. But from my understanding, when Jesus returns, those who are just will be just, and those who are unjust will stay unjust. So I'm thinking that will be the time that the probation is closed, when Jesus come back. Maybe the stuff in Revelation is going to happen or has happened or is happening, but a choice after God sends Jesus back, decisions aren't to be made anymore because Jesus made a decision. When he comes back, whatever state you're in, that's where you're going to remain. Those who have maybe passed away before then, whatever state they were in, that's what state they're going to be raised up to.
Russell?
Isn't it the plague of the sun scorching the earth, where it says people gnaw their tongues in agony, and yet they still don't repent?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
This is, I think it's, my understanding is that God continues to provide evidence, and He needs evidence for the people who are saved. When people who are saved end up in heaven, and they start looking around for loved ones, and why isn't mother here? Why isn't my daughter here? Why isn't my brother here? Why my best friend? Why isn't he here?
So that's kind of that revealing aspect.
This is
that we were
more, it's
talking about.
revelation, exactly. It's more evidence. The guy can,
Yeah.
well, look, these are the evidences finally given to them at the very end of human time on this earth. And they were so settled into the lie that they refused to believe. And he'll still provide evidence, as mentioned earlier. When the heavenly city comes down to the earth and the doors are open, the people still refuse to come in. Even after 1,000 years, there may be some in heaven. See, if only my son could see this, he would gladly join in, and they don't.
We have a lot of precedents in the Bible of probation closing. The flood.
Yes.
We've got when the people were carried away into Babylon. That was a kind of closed probation for the Jews. We have when the gospel went from the Jews, when it departed from the Jews at the stoning of Stephen. These were all kinds of a closing of probation, but I don't want to talk too long, so I'm thinking about how God presented the truth to individuals. And we could take the example of Caiaphas. I think he's the perfect example of someone who knew the ministry of Jesus better than anyone else. He had his spies with Jesus for 3.5 years. He knew everything
That's a good
Jesus
point.
did, more than the disciples. And God kept revealing himself. He had an opportunity at the trial of Jesus to see Jesus' demeanor. And then on the day of the resurrection, 100 Roman soldiers burst into his bedroom, wake him up and say, "We have seen the risen Jesus." That's overwhelming evidence. But he was already set in what he was going to believe, and he refused that evidence. But that evidence was so clear. It was like God gave him one more chance.
Well said.
We're going to move on to verse 7, or looking at verse 7. Then one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God.